So I've read some news articles about how some students are utilizing AI for brainstorming. I wanted to talk specifically about brainstorming because brainstorming is about finding ideas, collecting ideas, organizing it, mapping it out, and then writing about a topic. I know a lot of people have said that brainstorming with AI can help bring topics and ideas, and especially for topics that are well established or that have kind of a definitive answer. I could see how that, basically that counts as research. Like, let's say in the medical field, right? Like the human body, the functions of the human body are not really subject to opinion, right? They're pretty well established. Or math might be another case, right? Now, in this case, though, it might make sense to have a standard answer to a question or, a math problem, right? The ability to. Although even, what's interesting is that there are always still new discoveries, though, even happening in the mathematical field, believe it or not. So, there might be new ways of thinking about things that haven't been documented. But I want to talk a little more about social studies issues that, just like history or philosophy or business or anything where, a book analysis, right? Anything where there isn't one way to slice the cake, so to speak. When people are asked about an idea or, asked to brainstorm something, we want to see what you think. It's good to do research and try to get some ideas, but you also want to bring yourself and your own personal experiences into the answer. The problem with getting AI to do all the thinking for you is that it's going to give you responses, but sometimes it might be a similar response to what it would have given, if you were to ask this, or it might give everyone kind of a similar response. In other words, I feel like it has the potential of limiting how we think about things. It has the power to, it's possible that if everyone just used AI and relied on AI, right, and didn't think for themselves, we would be basically whatever the AI says is what you would think. Like you wouldn't think anything else exists in a weird way. And I think when we're asking people questions, when you're asking people to brainstorm and come up with new ideas, you really want the students and business leaders to use their own analytical minds and come up with their own solutions so that are tailor-made and are based on what you would call the on-the-ground information, based on what is happening on the ground, what is happening before you, and that's something that sometimes, when you're looking at context, if let's say you're trying to think about something, usually there are, different, you might be thinking about a certain time period or your own personal business, right? Like how you can't just search, you can't just search and someone else can't tell you about your own business, right? Like it's your own business. Nobody knows about it. So, I believe it's important to be able to brainstorm on your own because I want to see what you come up with on your own. And also because, when you do this, you get the opportunity to be the inventor. You become the historian. You become the analyst. In other words, you are partaking in the act of, just like every other person in history, right? You get to be a part of that. You're actually participating. You're not just, the information is not just for you to consume, but also for you to contribute in a way. But to contribute, not something that's already been written, but something that actually, based on your own observation, what do you think? Just as, thinkers of the past did. For thousands of years, we have had classical thinkers, we've had middle-aged thinkers, And, we have modern day thinkers, and they all came up with their own ideas. And sometimes, or I perhaps you could say, or oftentimes, they were erroneous or perhaps far off, right? But they're still relevant in some way, and they represent a point of view, a human point of view. That is the whole point of having a writing assignment as an intellectual. If we just have an AI machine collecting all of what has been known up till now, or up till a certain time, which might be a lot, but still, there are still new ways of doing things that could revolutionize the world, but they won't happen unless we get those new ideas. And those new ideas come essentially from people who can think on their own. Now, the value that a human being can bring to the universe when they bring when they observe the universe, okay? When a human being thinks of ideas and comes up with solutions that fit what is happening, and the solutions can be something that are very specific, that it's not really something that a computer could really is capable of understanding or capable of organizing, right? Because we can observe the world and we can choose and know what's important and what's not. And, without a computer doesn't know if for example, if I'm thinking about something that, let's say I'm thinking about something that is happening in front of me, that is in my room, but I'm also thinking about something that is happening somewhere else. But nobody knows how it works. It's not documented anywhere. So it's not possible for a computer to know. And so, this is what humans are able to do. They're able to connect things together. Or maybe it's something that, somebody just came up with yesterday. Maybe a colleague of yours came up with an idea, and so you want to sort of integrate that into your idea. Well, how would a computer know that, right? So in a sense, this is where the human imagination really it's a benefit because it's relevant to you. What you think or the ideas that you come up with are relevant, and the more you practice, the more you'll be able to do it. And the other fear that I might have is that if somebody were to rely too much on computers to think for them, they might lose the ability to think for themselves, because your brain, because it's hard. I'll tell you right now, it's not easy coming up with ideas, and it doesn't get easier. Like, yes, you become hardened to it, you get used to it, right? You're able to grind and do it, but it's still difficult. It takes energy. And so I'm telling you, like, coming up with ideas, what Steve Jobs did, whatever, these people, they were racking their brains, right? Bill Gates, I know during their time when they were trying to come up with solutions, their brains were hurting. And this is what I'm talking about. It's that process, going through that difficult process it is a skill. It is absolutely a skill. It feels physical, but it's not physical. It's completely intellectual. It's in the mind. If you want to consider the brain sort of like the body in a way, it kind of is, but it's not really. And I don't know how to describe it because, I've talked to or people who know more about the brain and the body, and they've told me that, they've told me different things. So I don't know exactly how it matches up to how a brain actually works, but I can only tell you how it feels like, and I can just tell you that it hurts, that it takes up energy, is what I'm saying. And it's difficult, and it's certainly a skill. The more you do it, the better you become. So the more you think about things, the better you become at analyzing things. Even so, so the thing is, maybe you might have a business plan, but whatever business plan that a computer comes up with, it might not work for your business or for your line of work. And even reading, there's another issue as well, which is even reading the brainstorming of a computer AI, it could lead you in a direction that you otherwise wouldn't have gone. It might influence your thinking, and it might kind of prevent you from thinking about other things. It might make an association so strong on you that you think that, oh, this must be the direction to go in, but it might not be. Like, there might be other directions you could have gone if you hadn't been influenced. It's like suggestion. It's like if somebody is interviewing you and they start saying something to you, right? And sometimes when they ask a question a certain way, they might get you to think like, oh, yeah. And so your brain, right, if somebody asks you a question, your brain starts thinking on whatever they came up with. And then you're kind of like, oh, yeah. And then your brain stays on that. And then you don't say what you would have said. And the issue is that if you hadn't had that suggestion, you might have come up with a different answer, which is preferable, which is what you want, right? I don't want to suggest something to you in the fear that you might your brain will stop thinking, like literally. And this happens when we're having conversations with each other, right? It's like if somebody like brings up a topic of conversation, right? You're having a conversation and they're like, oh yeah, so what do you think about this? All of a sudden they're talking about a topic, and then, it's like whatever topic you were thinking, or even if you weren't thinking of anything, now you're thinking about that topic, but you wouldn't have thought that if the suggestion hadn't been made. And so these computer AIs, they might suggest something, but is it really, like, do we really want the suggestion? In other words, you could have thought of something creative and interesting, but instead you're going to be thinking on whatever was suggested. And so, but the point is, the reason why we talk to each other, the reason why when I ask someone a question, this is good as an interviewing skill, but also especially in academia, when you're trying to learn or find out new ways of thinking things. The whole point of me asking you is so that I can hear what you would have said. Like, that's the value. The value of talking to someone is getting to see what answer they would have given. What were they thinking at the time? And or what do you think is important, right? And so now that being said, I don't think that doesn't mean that I don't think AI or research, right, or researching in general is a bad thing, because I love to research. And you could include AI into some sort of research, right? If maybe your line of business, perhaps can make use of it, right? And, I've spent hours researching, okay? And for me, research is like, I actually do like Google and the way that search engines provide, and there are, usually professionals, they have their own little places where they where they can find more information that's relevant to what they're looking for, right? Like, but different journals and papers written by other academics. Now, I've spent hours researching, but when I don't look at it as a way to find. When I'm researching, I don't look at it as a way to find a completeness of how things are. And although oftentimes it is complete, and sometimes the research is enough to actually satisfy whatever question I have. But, when I research, though, I usually do it with the idea that the research may or may not be useful to me. But I still want to see what's out there. Sometimes I just want to see, like, what have other people said about this topic that I'm researching? And then I'll either use some of it or use none of it. Or, because maybe it's like, oh, okay, though, that's interesting. That's what people have said about this. All right, well, you know what? I'm going to say something different, because I'm thinking of something else. And it seems to fit to me. And so, this is how I do research. Now, with this video, I really wanted to emphasize the importance of being able to come up with your own ideas and having the ability to think critically and come up with your own ideas. Like, in other words, you need to make yourself the historian. You become a part of the history. As I said before, the inventor and the creator of ideas. And even if those ideas are wrong, right? Like, we know, for example, Aristotelian science, what Aristotle, in ancient Greek times, that wasn't always correct, right? Their methodologies were a little, different from what we would consider the scientific method today. And we also know that in medieval times, they were also wrong about a lot of things. They didn't understand everything. They were limited in what they could do, but they still wrote. They still wrote a lot. And to me, that says something about these inventors, these scientists, because it was a reflection of humans wanting to be right. They had a thirst for knowledge. They wanted to know, and they tried. And sometimes that has value. You're not always going to be right about everything. And I don't think any of us, I'm pretty sure we all have ideas that probably aren't correct. But that's why we share with each other, right? We have a process of sharing, and if someone else can read what you thought, it's good to know what people might think, because you can easily think, oh, you might think this, or you might think, you can catalog, I guess, what people think about something. And so it's worth noting those ideas and observations. And you want to know why? It's still worth noting them, because especially when it comes to the interpretations of reviews or the analyses of business plans, oftentimes there is no right answer. So various theories and personal ideas are appropriate and to be sought after and are very valuable. What is the point of talking to someone or asking someone a question if they're just going to always repeat what someone else has said, or what some other journal said? I might as well, in that case, I could have written the prompt and done the research myself. You could have just shown me what you got. And even then, I could have just gone straight to the source. Why even make the content yourself or that person, right, who is just going to quote something else always or whatever? When you ask someone a question, it's because sometimes there are new situations that pop up, and being able to find a solution to something that has never been thought of is what creativity is. That's really the skill that we're looking to build. If a new situation comes up, you want to be able to walk up to an intellectual and ask them, what do you think of this? And a person who can brainstorm and come up with their own solution, that can help in ways that people who have not practiced learning how to brainstorm or write down their own thoughts could ever do. The amazing thing about this is that when you ask a question and that person is able to come up with something on their own, that answer might be the right answer or the solution to the problem. The solution is not always something that has an analog to the past, or that has something that can be found in a book, or something that has already been theorized before. The solution could be something. The solution to your problems are sometimes things that have never been thought of before. And the more someone develops the ability to think for themselves, the more likely they are to be able to find the right answer. Thanks for joining me.